bombs mostly. So, come work with me, and we'll create all kinds of new inventions. Bombs mostly.
Science!
You can grow into success with no regrets when you work with Dr. Boom.
Oh, yeah! Technology!
You can work with the best and the brightest when you work with Dr. Boom.
Ginormous mechanical pneumatic gorilla robot arms for smashing everything.
What he said. Yeah.
Work with Dr. Boom.
Come add your skills to my team at Boom Laboratories. We're exploding with opportunity.
Greetings, my friends, and welcome from the Boomsday Laboratories. My name is Dr. Dan, and join with me, my assistant today is...
Ginormous mechanical pneumatic gorilla robot voice for casting everything.
Today we have a really fun invitational for you guys today. Normally you guys get to see personalities and players duke at it in competitive Hearthstone, but today is a celebration for the launch of the Boomsday Project, which is available now. If you guys log in, you get 3 free packs and a legendary minion from a random class. That's right, for free. So make sure to claim that if you haven't, as well as all your bonus bundles and goodies, whether it's skins or extra legendaries.
That's right, update your apps. Log into your battle nets. You can't get packs if you don't play Hearthstone. So
Right.
if you're not playing Hearthstone, play some Hearthstone.
Yeah, make sure you get those assets downloaded, and we're gonna have a lot of fun for the next, few hours or so. Today, Admirable and I aren't necessarily just, giving away, hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash. Today, we're going to be presenting the very first competitive decks that you'll be seeing in the Boomsday Project, and I'm really excited, Admirable, because with Boomsday comes a lot of new experiments, if you will, and I've been seeing some interesting brews out there. Whether you see some streamers or players posting their deck lists on social media.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of cool stuff that Boomsday has been going with, and the format is no exception to that as well. Teams are going to be submitting 4 decks each, and then they have to conclude at least 8 Boomsday cards within each one of those decks. And then from there, they're going to ban one of the opposing classes that's available, and then they'll play a best-of-3 match against each other in a round-robin format. And regardless of whether or not a team has won 2 games to start with, they're going to play that 3rd game anyway.
That's right. So it's fairly similar to October Brawl or the Witchwood Invitational if you guys saw from the past, but this time we have more teams in the fold. So in the past we had a Europe versus America's battle and, a fight for pride. If you can call it a fight, I mean, America's took it home with Firebat taking it the last match, which of course mattered the most. So, it wasn't exactly close for a lot of people who did watch, but today we get more countries and regions represented. So we do have, of course, Americas and Europe traditionally, but we also have Korea and Taiwan. And today's schedule is going to be as so. We're going to have a round-robin group match. So we're going to kick things off with Korea versus Europe, then North America versus Taiwan, and every team will play each other for 6 total matches.
That's right, and those 6 total matches are going to decide who's going to be our winner for today's Boomsday Project. There you see match number 4, 5, and 6, Korea versus North America, Taiwan versus Korea, and then leading things out at the end of the day with Europe versus North America.
That's right, and we have an eclectic group of players. Some people being streamers like Dahyoni, Riniauer, Gerwins, but they also have competitive pedigrees. You have Riniauer from the very beginning days of OGN doing well, Dahyoni making a world championship appearance in 2016, and then focus on some other teams like Europe and Americas. Europe, of course, 2-time European champion Tice, Dane, who's recently been crowned the History of Hearthstone champion.
That's right.
And Wacky Jackie, who has even, taken down a Seat Story Cup featuring some of your favorite Hearthstone players and personalities. So these guys all have a very well-rounded wealth of Hearthstone experience.
Yeah, and of course, Trump from North America has been one of the, I'd say, ambassadors of the game for a number of years now. Ali Strauss, a more new face to that ambassador side of things as well. One of my favorite personalities that's been out there. And Ant, who's had the explosion of success in the last year. He's been in the competitive scene since 2014, but his last year or so has just been astounding where his tournament results are concerned.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, world champion Tom 60229 from Taiwan, along with 2 AHQ members in Roger and Shaxi. Roger, of course, being one of the most prominent, if not the most prominent Taiwanese Hearthstone streamer. also a competitor from like ESL Legendary Series, and then Shaxi, the HCT point leader for all of Asia Pacific in 2018. He is a player that you might be seeing in the 2018 World Championship if he continues his streak that's been going for the first 2 seasons here.
And I'd say that Asia Pacific recently is one of the more competitive scenes that's out there. The competition has stepped up a lot, and so to be at the top of that point standings, I think is a big stamp on your resume right now.
All right, so that's the lowdown of how the schedule is going to proceed with all the teams. Our first match, as we mentioned, will be Europe versus Korea. So why don't we go ahead and talk to a member of one of these teams, and we have Thijs from the Netherlands joining us. Thijs, can you hear us?
Yeah, I hear you perfectly, Froden.
All right, what's up, man? How are you enjoying the Boomsday project so far?
Well, pretty good. I've played quite a lot over the last few days, maybe a little bit too much almost, but no, I've been enjoying it. So the expansion has been crazy, but a lot of fun.
What's been one of your favorite cards that you've been playing with so far?
Well, the biggest card I'm a fan of is like Zilliax, as it's probably the legendary that makes the most new decks viable, so not just class-oriented. I like the Pogo a lot. It's kind of fun to hop around with the Pogo here and there. But now I feel every class kind of got something that made it kind of nice, and the legendary spells are probably the best thing, as they kind of make unique archetypes also possible.
Yeah, speaking of unique, you're also playing with Dane and Jackie, 2 of the most unique players out there. Did you guys talk a lot beforehand, or are you guys kind of just bringing your own thing and trying to see if it can work together at the last second? Like, talk to me about the team dynamics here, because this is a very interesting pairing of personalities and players here.
Yeah, well, we had very short time. I mean, the expansion is just there 2 days, and you know how when an expansion comes, it's complete crazy, and it's very hard to say how powerful some decks are when there is not really a meta yet. And we have some of the most creativeness in the team, maybe, and I'm not sure if that's always a good upside or downside, because we had quite some decks that came around that I'm not sure if we shall have considered them too much, but it definitely brings a lot of creative part in the thing too, and I think that's also important when an expansion just hit, that you go with your own way a little bit.
All right, absolutely. All right, so we don't want to take too much of your time because we do have some games to get to, so we do want to ask you one final question. Is Europe going to take it down this time? I mean, you guys did do pretty well in the last Witchwood Invitational, but you guys ended a little bit short because Fireball was able to take it, so this time is Europe's time to reign, right?
Of course, come on.
All right, cool. Well, good luck in your matches, Tyson. You'll need it going up against Team Korea to start things off.
Let's do.
All right, so a couple of words with the 2-time European champion. And Tyus, always smiling, always really positive. And if you guys really enjoy a good mix of competitive decks and, a little bit of those memes, a little bit of those joke decks climbing really high, Tice is your man. Now, he's paired with 2 guys who, really just go for the ladder. Jackie Chan, I've been seeing some of the deck lists he's posting, and I'm just like, what are you doing? Academic espionage with Myra's unstable element, and then trying to find a win condition after you effectively sabotaged yourself, right? The whole point and the irony of academic espionage is that you kind of messed with your own deck. He's playing decks like that and winning. So, can they bring something like that? And I feel like if you are on a team with Jackie Chan and Dane, they're not going to let you bring, Odd Paladin with a couple of decks. They're not going to let you play, Zoo with a couple of interesting,
They're just like, no, give me the keyboard.
Yeah. They'll definitely make your mouse move and click on some of those really wacky cards that we're not expecting right now.
I think it's awesome to see. Tyson mentioned that Zilliax is one of his favorite things. 5-mana 3/2 Divine Shield, Rush, Life Steal,
Taunt.
Magnetic, and Taunt minion. Like, how much more could you ask for? You get to upgrade your own mechs with it. You get to restore some of your life. It's a fairly aggressive thing. Like,
I want the Wind Fury so I can just play Corpse Taker and not have to worry about it. But
you have to play Alec here for that.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Or, throw them off Arceer. All right, so, as mentioned, we have Korea also going up against Team Europe here. And, truth be told, we don't really connect too much to the non-speaking audience, but we do know that these players have very strong pedigree in competition. And I do know that players like Dahuni like to mess around a lot. Like, some of the funniest highlights for Korean Hearthstone videos come from this guy. And he's also, very creative, too. So I really hope that these guys, with the restriction or the enforcement, rather, of 8 Boomsday cards, they don't stop there. I would love to see, 10, 20, even maybe a full deck of 30 Boomsday cards. I don't know if they're allowed to play Whizbang. I don't think that's the case. I think the ban is still in effect. But it would be funny to see something like that. You know, something very off the wall. Like, you're never going to expect me to play a Whizbang deck. Can we do something similar to that?
You could actually just, I mean, you still could, in theory, kind of play Whizbang. You just have to actually go build the recipes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. You can just submit all 4 deck recipe decks.
Yeah, if you really wanted to do that, that is something you could do.
That's right.
It doesn't quite meet the criteria, though. Itself, that's only 1 Boomsday card in your deck.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. What's been some of your favorite decks from the Boomsday project so far? What are some things you're tinkering with and experimenting?
I'm playing a lot of Pogo Hopper. I've been playing a ton of that lately. I've pretty much tried just about everything except for Hunter decks so far. A lot of mechanical stuff has been in there. You know, the Paladin's moved around from odd to even to like aggro mechanical to like mid-range mechanical to like a control mech.
Really?
If
You've seen Control Mech?
No, I've tried these things.
Okay.
I've tried a lot of stuff, and then some of the more successful ones I've been having are like decks that like really back themselves up with Giggling Inventor, a 5-mana 2/1 that summons 2 Annoyatrons alongside of it.
Yeah, Giggling Inventor has been a huge backbone for a lot of these decks that are definitely doing very well right now.
That card is insane at securing a board position, or if you have stuff like Swipe in your hand or like a Consecration in your hand, it's great at softening up a board so that way you can use one of those AoE spells afterwards. I feel like that card, you know, I thought it was going to be like one of the top 10 cards in the set. It feels like it's closer to like top 3 cards in the set. It's
Giggling
just
Inventor,
very
top 3
strong.
Card. Wow, there are some really powerful legendaries in the set, or just powerful cards in general. So you're willing to put Giggling Inventor over some of these really hyped cards like Flabidinous Floop or his Gloop.
So,
or related cards like that.
Ty said a really interesting thing where a lot of the legendary cards give you ways to make interesting archetypes. I feel like a lot of those archetypes are still supported by Giggling Inventor. Just the fact that it's a lot of defense in one single card means a lot for being able to utilize, a 7-mana legendary spell or a 5-mana legendary spell that requires you to draw the rest of your deck and then set up with stuff like Lab Recruiter or Arcane Espionage, or maybe just even being able to kill them afterwards. Just Giggling Inventor being able to support that by such a large amount, I think is just a very important tool for a lot of decks.
Yeah, we're moments away from getting the match started, but in the meantime, as we get the players set up and into the match, and all the comms available, as we do want to clarify, players are allowed to discuss with their teams for the plays. However, if you guys watched BlizzCon in 2017, where we had the players on stage next to each other, and when they lose, they effectively have to leave the stage. That's what we're kind of simulating, but doing through an online venue, if you will. The players will be in a single channel talking to each other, but when they lose, they have to leave the Discord, and it's going to be up to another player to pick up where they left off. And after that, it's still the same exact thing, best of 3 conquest, but we're going to be guaranteed playing all 3 games.
Yeah, I think it's really cool to see too, like that watching Kranich be upstage by himself and then slowly, piece by piece, the other team got whittled away. That was just a really cool experience to watch, and I loved being able to cast that and being able to see it. And so just having anything similar to it online, I'm happy with, because I think that's like an impending feeling of disaster. If one of your teammates leaves, and maybe the second one goes away, and you're like, well, that's it.
Well, that's kind of like the risk of having guys like Gahuni and Jackie Chan and Day on your team, because they bring a deck that they know how to play, but let's say they have to get, they have to be eliminated and leave the channel. They know how to pilot that deck really well, and especially, the small nuances of like how you sequence things. If you don't have them, then you're going to be left in the dark, and you have to okay, I have to figure this out on the fly with some of these crazy combos. And there's a lot of combos out there, Admirable. I've been seeing a ton of Mech Cthulhu decks that's actually working very reliably, and it's going across multiple classes, not just Druid, not just Priest, but I've seen Warlock. They discount their Mechathune and then try to play, Cataclysm with Bloodbloom to destroy their entire hand and Mechathune. I've seen Rogues do it as well, where they prep and do a bunch of crazy things with it too. It's pretty nuts out there. It feels like the wild, wild west, even though we're in the Netherstorm.
It definitely feels like things are getting crazy right now, and as Ty said too, it's not really a metagame right now. People are trying all sorts of crazy stuff. You don't know what's going to happen, but we do know what's going to happen right now. It's game number 1. Dione, alongside the rest of his Korean team, is going to be facing off against Tice with his European team.
All right, we're going to start things off with Druid versus Rogue, and with a Vanish and Giggling Inventors. I get a strong feeling that Honorable is going to be really happy casting this game. As you can see, the bans coming down as Team Europe has banned the Warlock away from Korea, and Druid has been also hyped as one of the top classes for the set, and so far for the first few days of the expansion, it's kind of lived up to that hype. Druid is doing extremely well with a lot of their control or slow variants.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the powerful Druid cards prior to this expansion, the ones that come to mind for me, Wild Growth, Nourish, Ultimate Infestation, and Branching Paths. Oh, and then Spreading Plague for defense. Druid got a lot of support in this set to improve and expand on the amount of things that they can do with this deck. So, seeing stuff like Giggling Inventor in here, not really much of a surprise because just another defensive tool to help you buy to a late game position.
Yes.
And with Europe and the rogue deck that we're seeing right now, very much a similar thing. Giggling Inventor just helps buy you a lot of time to set up endgame situations with Lab Recruiter. Maybe make a bunch of Pogo Hoppers, allow you to actually use Myra's Unstable Element, a 5-mana rogue legendary spell. It says draw the rest of your deck.
Right, regardless of how big your hand gets.
Regardless.
You can have a 25-card deck with Pogo Hoppers and Lab Recruiters, but you will draw all of them. And the idea is to dump your hand eventually and then fill up your hand with 10 more cards. But we've seen people just say, let's cut to the chase. Let's draw our entire deck and play with the very few cards we choose to shuffle into your deck. Because of that card you see third from the right, Lab Recruiter, shuffle 3 copies of a minion that you choose with this Battle Cry.
Yeah, friendly minion.
Friendly minion, excuse me. Yes, and especially when you combine that with the Death Knight, Valir the Hollow, that has the ability to replicate a very fond concept that players from Hearthstone will remember from the past called Shaman, where you can just essentially avoid fatigue for the rest of the game and build what seems to be an infinite army of minions.
So there's one of the, I imagine, Boomsday restrictions that's added in there with the 1-mana, 1/1 Magnetic Rush. So that allows them to do 2 things. Number 1, it allows them to make big Pogo Hoppers have Rush so they can kill other big minions. And then number 2, it's something you can utilize with Sonya. Being able to have Sonya play with the Magnetic Rush, you get to 1 by 1 just pay a mana and deal a damage to a minion over and over again.
I said he loves Ziliax, so this could be something of his doing. Perhaps Jackie or Dane helped him see the light. Tice and his team, of course, talking over the internet. But one thing I want to comment is it seems like Team Korea at least has members of, next to them. It feels like with Daihuni and what seems to be like one of his teammates next to him.
Skaterbot, Skalaterbot.
Yeah, I think you do run into hand space issues, especially if you're going to play things like Giggling Inventor and Vanish.
Oh yeah.
And it's really cool too because one of the ways you can really make your opponent's hand awkward is if you go wide onto the board and your opponent plays Spreading Plague, which summons a 1/5 taunt for every enemy minion. So you can imagine that there's some really clogged board states if you go, very wide. You can vanish that back, and Druid has a bunch of 1/5s they have to play for 2 mana each, and it clogs up their space a lot. And they need that space if they're going to go play cards like Ultimate Infestation, and it's going to cause a lot of traffic jams.
Yep. And then hand space issues can be very real on the Druid side as well. I mean, this is Spreading Plague for 1 minion with an Arcane Tyrant to back it up. I mean, it's not a lot of stuff, but sometimes you take what you can get. And Vanish, I think, was a really cool note to hit in this deck because it's serving a couple of purposes. Number 1 is that it can provide defense, of course, by returning all your opposing minions to their opponent's hand, but it can actually act as like a refuel element as well. Say you have to just use Ziliax without Magnetic just to try to get something on board, or you have a couple small Pogo Hoppers maybe with a Lab Recruiter after a Myra's Unstable Element. Vanish is a card that can act as a refueling element as well.
Yes, and then you have the ability to shuffle Giggling Inventors into your deck if you're trying to play against aggressive strategies. I was playing one of those Zoo Warlock decks just to see how its power level was, and I ran into a rogue that literally just kept shuffling Giggling Inventors after Giggling Inventors. They would get Lab Recruiter the Giggling Inventor, and then Lab Recruiter their own Lab Recruiter. So essentially having an infinite sources of Giggling Inventors. And I just kept dying. I couldn't get through. There's too many 1/2 Annoyatrons on the board.
You having a giggle?
No, I was not having a giggle. It was not very amusing. To my opponent, they were laughing their heads off. But to me, Annoyatron was living up to its name.
I love that card. Both Annoyatron and Giggling Inventor.
Sure.
Sure.
Diony.
Yeah, whatever, man.
Turn 7 is pretty awkward. They had the Wild Growth. They even drew cards with Branching Paths. But, you know, this is something that Druid can run into from time to time, which is having awkward turns to fill.
Yeah, I mean, the one benefit that they really have is that they're not under a lot of threat or pressure right now. And so being able to just keep your opponent at bay and then roll into a Lich King turn, it's pretty solid.
That's right. And if their opponent wasn't able to remove the Giggling Inventor, Tice had Sonya Shadow Dancer plus some other shenanigans. Ooh, Pogo Hopper with the Lab Recruiter and being able to draw things with the Elven Minstrel. That's exactly what Team Europe is looking for.
Yeah, this was the setup for the Shadow Step last turn. You know, Shadow Step enabled that this Pogo Hopper draw could be big. So, while this turn it's not looking, super hot for them, I'm still looking at another Shadow Step.
Yep.
I'm looking at Vanish. I'm looking at Vile Spine Slayer. There's a lot of time that Tice and Europe are going to be able to buy to start making some big Pogo Hoppers.
That's right. And not to mention that even if Daihuini is able to build a big board, Tice and crew have their
Shadow Step the
advantages.
Pogo!
Love it.
Every time you play Pogo Hopper, it gets +2/+2 for each other Pogo Hopper that you get. Excuse us, we actually have had this backwards on the overlay. It's
Yes.
Korea that's playing Rogue right now, and Europe is on Druid at the moment.
Yeah, and that makes a lot more sense to me, given that Tice, came to prominence in Hearthstone from his Druid play and something that he loves playing, and he's also very proficient at these kind of combo style decks. And it makes sense that Daihuini likes to meme with Rogue, because I feel like half the time when we're turning into stream, he's doing something stupid with that class and somehow winning still, or losing horribly, which is very amusing.
So apologies that we've got this backwards. We'll get it fixed as quickly as we can.
Yes.
Vile Spine, you love to see that if you're in the Rogue position.
Talk about tempo swing and these these Pogo Hoppers. Shout out to Bunny Hopper, by the way, future world champion.
Yeah, they usually make the World Championship card after a player has won the World Championship.
Right after Fire Bat won, then they made Fiery Bat. But apparently we're sequencing it backwards. So a little order LUL if you can for Blizzard. Speaking of order, Tice picks up the Malygos, and with Flabinus Floop, the scientist for the Druid class this expansion, and the Gloop, you're going to be able to do some pretty big combos. You can play Malygos first, and then you'll have a 4-mana 3/4, because it's the most recent copy of whatever minion you played, regardless of what turn it is. You can then go off with Malygos. The only problem? The spell that they can use together is Moonfire. Obliterate, Naturalize. They only do unconditional damage to destroy a minion. It's not actually anything boosted by spell damage.
Yeah, that's what that glowing left card on the side is. If you're curious why that was glowing in 4 mana, that's what Flabinus Floop does. So when it's in your hand, every time you play a minion, it changes into that minion. If it's still in your deck, it's still just Flabinus Floop. So you can't do something crazy like play a Malygos and then Oaken summons out your Flabinus Floop. You have to have him in your hand, but he will remain as the last minion played until you actually play another one. If you summon a minion with like a Spreading Plague, for instance, it won't change into that.
Yeah. And with Sonya Shadow Dancer, Team Korea have the ability to remove this Malygos, but the threat is the 4-mana Malygos, and can they survive big burst damage? And with the pickup of Valyra the Hollow, that does give you some more life to work with, and a Moonfire being used, which means their combo potential is lowered a little bit.
Got to get through this little scarab thing before you can reach Mallyman.
Oh man, Mallyman is so scary.
Yeah, but we're looking at a 1-mana Vile Spine here with that Sonya. So the question is, how do you get through?
Right.
And then what do you do afterwards? Honestly, the Fan of Knives was a little bit surprising to me. It had the Pogo Hopper.
I think they wanted to use maybe the Skater bot to potentially poke her.
That's what I was thinking.
So they definitely want to trade the bunny.
So they're looking like they want to play another Pogo Hopper this turn. I think that's quite wise as well.
Whew. That's going to be, what, 7/7?
Yep.
Yikes. This is
getting
starting
big.
to get way out of control. I mean, and usually part of the criticisms against the Rogue is that it takes a long time to get the bunnies going. You have to wait for a long time, or things have to go really right, and you're under pressure a lot. But Druid is a class right now that pretty much doesn't pressure you at all. And this is one of the fastest 7/7s I've seen from a Pogo Hopper in quite some time.
Juicy Psych Melon now in hand. I believe this actually might do very little at this point. It's a 4-mana spell. It says draw a 7, 8, 9, and 10 cost minion from your deck.
Right. And you usually use this with a new card called Dream Petal Florist. So you can draw that 7-mana card. It's a 7-mana 4/4 that says at the end of your turn, discount a random friendly minion in your hand by 7. So you can make Malygos cost 2. So you draw usually both of them with Malygos, and you have a guaranteed discount if it's the only minion in your hand, which Druid has so many good spells that it can get away with playing that. However, it doesn't really do much if you've already drawn Malygos. And, you know, even worse, you know, it seems like Team Europe is drawing more cards, so if they pick up their Dream Petal Floors, that's a dead card, unless they are including other cards that we're not anticipating with the Boomsday rule.
Yeah, it's very difficult for them to play a minion right now while they have the Malygos in hand. And so the goal they're looking for, it looks like, is to have a big swipe turn with that 4-cost 3/4 Malygos in hand. So they want to play the Malygos, swipe away a board, and maybe use Floop's Glorious Gloop alongside it to restore a bunch of mana. You know, maybe draw some more cards that turn and play some. You're trying to create a big combo chain of spells all at once and eliminate your opponent.
Here's part of the problem, though. With Valir the Hollow coming down, it means that they can't do big damage to the opponent's life total, which is kind of what this deck wants to do. They'll at least have to wait a turn because of the stealth gained by the Battle Cry. And that extra Shadow Reflection that gives you a copy of whatever card you just played is going to be super nasty the moment Team Korea picks up another Pogo Hopper, perhaps another Lab Recruiter, or even other big combos we're not thinking about.
Yeah, it's looking like it could get a little bit rough here. I mean, no card draw in hand means that you're not really going to be able to get the job done with just, you know, the single Malygos and the single spell. And with Dream Petal Flourish drawn, you can't even play that right now unless you want to change your Flabidinous Floop, which is a name I'm going to say about 1 million times and mess up, I'm certain, at some point.
Yes, they are our caster warm-ups now. You know, vocal, some people, you know, do the do-re-mis or count. We pretty much just say every Druid legendary that was released this set.
Unique New York, Flabidinous Floop.
And his Glorious Gloop.
Flabidinous Floop and his Glorious Gloop.
You're completely right about the fact that before Europe can play other cards that aren't the Floop, they have to kind of get this Malygos out because Malygos has already been played, so they've invested their mana to go for these big swings. And yes, they do have the Malygos swipe. They can wait another turn if they want to be defensive. What other cards will they have that they can draw with this? Looks like they draw one card, and it's the other Dream Petal Florist.
Yeah, so it just thins it out of the deck at this point. You know, this is a lot of stuff that I've encountered as well with playing a lot of new cards in combo decks.
Oh my.
Is sometimes they require you to be extremely patient with your resources and try to navigate a circumstance. You know, just because you can turn Floop into a Malygos doesn't necessarily mean it's right. It doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong either, but the point is there's just a lot of stuff that happens, and you have to be able to really partition those resources properly, or sometimes you get in trickier spots.
Wow. Yeah, try to deal with this now. Now, there are 2 naturalizes, and I feel like if I'm Team Korea, even though this was an amazing play to get out even stronger tempo onto the board, and yes, your opponent has difficulty removing it, they do have 2 naturalizes as well.
All right, well, that's the Goose.
Goose is loose, and finally, it's time for Europe to strike back. And again, if you guys are tuning in a little bit late into this game, we do have the cameras switched in the wrong positions. Dice and Europe are on the Druid, and Korea is on the Rogue. So you want to kill a Sonya Shadow Dancer first, so we can afford to utilize a little bit of mana to perhaps obliterate that. But it seems like they want to swipe instead.
So the swipe kills the Sonya at the same time.
Right.
So they don't get back a little bit of a dumb little bunny from it.
True.
They're going to draw 2 cards here, and then the Shadow Reflection from Valir is going to put a 10th card in the hand. So it does burn away 1 draw.
Yes, but they know that their opponent has the Vile Spine Slayer as well. So that means Malygos is completely off the table now. I'm feeling really bad for Team Europe here because their main win condition is not going to really do anything at this point.
Yeah, it's gone. There's no more Malygos, and Druid does not have a way to resurrect Malygos.
Yeah.
So I don't know how they win at this point, but it's going to require some substantial shenanigans if they're going to pick up a victory at this point.
Right. A little awkward, too, because I think they're at 9 cards. So if Team Korea will burn another Pogo Hopper, let's say in some weird scenario they burn the rest of their Pogo Hoppers and Lab Recruiters through like a naturalize, and then they burn it through a natural draw. I wonder how that would shape up. It's not something very reliable for Europe to count on, but it's something to consider. Also, another thing to consider is how does Druid win this game at this point? I feel like they don't have enough damage anymore with Malygos and Floop out of the equation.
Well, maybe there's something crazy we haven't seen yet, but you know, I venture to say then it's not going to be the case. I mean, you have a 4-4 facing down your opponent's 3-4. You know that they have tons of just strong rogue cards that kill stuff in their deck. This is an uphill battle at this point where, you know, Valir the Hollow has enabled you to, you know, simulate what Jade decks used to do with a very grand setup. And they're smooth sailing at this point. They're 22. You have no pressure. They got a full grip.
Yeah, time is on Korea's side. They actually can play keep away, and something very telling too was Juicy Psych Mill gave us a lot of information.
Oh yeah.
We didn't look at the deck list beforehand because we wanted to also be surprised along with you guys, but the fact that they didn't draw anything for 7, 8, 9, or 10 mana cost means that they didn't, you know, play any other big win condition in the deck. Instead, they just jammed more Boomsday cards. Wow, double Pogo Hopper coming in, which allows them to just flood the board.
They could triple Pogo if they wanted to, but honestly, I think 13-13 and 15-15 probably enough.
Yeah, it should get there, especially because your opponent's already used a Naturalize, so you just need one of these Pogo Hoppers to land.
Let's add a 17-17.
Yeah, why not? I mean, most likely one of these will stick, and then you can double Lab Recruiter in the worst case scenario. And Malfurion, the Pestilent, is a fantastic Death Knight, and Tice kind of last because, you know, this is a great hand if you actually still had a win condition, but
He found lethal.
yeah, Europe's able to spot it, obliterate to kill themselves, and Team Korea start things off by upsetting quite possibly the most hyped class of this expansion. And a little applause from his teammates. Dahyuni, of course, carrying Team Korea to a victory to start off our Boomsday Invitational.
Just bouncing around until you found the right spot.
Yeah, Admirable told me right before, I mean, first of all, during rehearsals yesterday, he was jamming this deck a lot. And he was telling me, he's like, dude, I'm going to climb the legend from 25 on Asia server with this deck. And I'm a big believer the more I see it. Granted, it could have been optimized a little bit more, but because every deck has to have 8 Boomsday cards, you can see there was a little bit of awkwardness with, like, you know, the Skater Bot and the Zilliax. So if you guys also want to play that deck, you don't necessarily have to play that package if, say, you don't have Zilliax.
Yeah, and then the other thing, too, is if you want to see what all the decks are, at some point after this event's done, all the decks are going to go up. They're going to post them all online so that you guys can go see them and maybe, you know, cook them up, do some ideas with them, or just play those decks in general to see what these guys have played today.
All right, so game number 2 is underway. Now, remember, the best of 3 is going to be played in its entirety, so we can get all the players who, you know, dedicate their time. This is also live because, you know, we have, you know, we really want to push out to the live audience. So in Korea right now, I think it's like midnight.
Yeah.
So they're like staying up very late to play, and then meanwhile here in, you know, the Pacific time for people like Antonelli, Straza, and Trump, who's also in Central, it's like pretty early. It's like 8 a.m. You know, so
It's pretty early.
It's a very global game with Hearthstone, but it's also the competition is live and global. So we do want to, you know, have these players be, you know, rewarded for their time. They show up at midnight. You know, we don't want the guy playing through, I think it's Rainy Hour playing for Korea. We don't want him to feel like, I wasn't needed here. Why did I even show up?
Yeah, we will be playing all 3 games of the series, which is really cool to see because I just want to see all the decks.
Yes.
I want to see what players have brought.
Yeah, I actually
See if I'm cooking up stuff like they are.
We didn't get a good look at the classes. I did see, you know, Druid. I think I saw, you know, Warrior in the mix, perhaps, but I think maybe my eyes could have deceived me. But I'm really curious to see some of these other classes that aren't experiencing nearly as much, you know, applause from the crowd right now, because you look at Warrior, I think a lot of people really want to make the mech packages or Dr. Boom Mad Genius, a new hero card, work. And there's some players out there that are dedicating their lives to try and make Warrior viable right now. You look at Fibonacci. I was spectating him the other day. Fortunately, it just seems like he's stuck a little bit on trying to figure out what's the best deck lists. So Warrior's in an interesting spot, and perhaps one of these teams can show us some of the ideas that are flowing around out there before we land on what is actually good for that class.
Well, to me, one of the big cards that I look at is just the Dinomatic card. 5 mana, 3/4 mech unit that says deal 5 damage, randomly divided among non-mech minions.
Friendly or enemy.
Friendly or enemy. And so to me, it's just like, what is the big thing I can do with that card? And Warrior has always been good at just killing a lot of minions in a row. So if you're playing against a lot of minion decks, a card like Dinomatic really speaks to me because it's just another strong removal spell that can start to chip away at your opponent, or it can help you eliminate the next minion that they play. And so, you know, if minions are super popular, Warrior feels like it's really strong. If decks are trying to do more like Malagos shenanigans, maybe it's not quite as good. Maybe you can get out of the life total range with just a ton of armor, but that feels like a more difficult task against, maybe like a Mechathune deck, for instance.
That's right. And, I do have high hopes for Warrior, and I hope we get to see it. But for now, we're going to go to Shaman. Now, Shaman has experienced a mini revitalization through a different reimagination of the Shutterwalk Battlecry deck. Normally, in the past, when you saw Shutterwalk being played, it was to essentially combo your opponent to death. You'd play Shutterwalk, you'd hope that the Grumble World Shaker would bounce back Shutterwalk for 1 mana and keep damaging your opponent through Life Drinkers and summoning copies of Serenite Chain Gang. Now, we've seen a lot of the Shaman decks throw away that entire package. They may have Serenite Chain Gang, but they don't have Life Drinker and Grumble World Shaker. And instead, they go for more tempo-oriented variants through trying to use things like Thrall Deathseer, so you can double evolve your minions multiple times throughout the game if you Shutterwalk.
Yeah. It's tempo Shutterwalk has been one of the big tools. And
it's just a Battlecry Shaman deck, but you're featuring Shutterwalk as the finisher.
And one of the reasons I think that list has become very popular at the start of this new expansion is because at the start of a new expansion, the decks I think that tend to do best are decks that just play strong minions. You play a lot of minions in a row, you start attacking your opponent. When they're playing combo decks, they're not refined yet. They don't have a ton of games under their belt. They don't know if one card in particular should be there or shouldn't be there. And so when that's happening, just playing a lot of stuff on board is very strong. And so when you look at Shaman got a couple new ways to do that. Number one is with Thunderhead, 4 mana 3/4. 4 mana 3/5 that says whenever you play a card with Overload, you summon 2 1/1 elementals with Rush. And a card like that helps you get on board real quick. You're looking at the hand right now with Dane, and he's got 2 Corridor Creepers plus Unstable Evolution. Shaman, its hero power makes minions.
Yes, and it's, we see minions being summoned too.
Yeah.
With the Primal Fin Totem. So Dane is very okay with these minions dying, and Regerwins wants to play more of a token Shaman approach. You can see him have Cult Master, Voltaic Burst, Bloodlust. That gives you a lot of opportunities to fight back onto the board. And of course, sticky minions like Giggling Inventor are so hard to remove that you should be able to burst your opponent out of the game.
That's the idea of it.
Anyway. There's no minions to play, though, for Regerwins, and they're falling far behind, and Thrall Deathseer being picked up.
They just can't help it. Smile and laugh when he sees the Thrall. He knows exactly where this game is headed to him. It's make some cheap Corridor Creepers.
Oh, yeah.
And then in the dungeons, they go deeper. And then in the mana cost, they go deeper as well. Unstable Evolution and Thrall Deathseer.
Wow, that's a big board.
If your opponent doesn't clear your stuff, that means you get the Bloodlust. If your opponent does clear your stuff, that means you get to play Corridor Creepers and evolve.
Seems like, an opportunity to utilize Lightning Storm, but you do Overload.
Well, that's the legendary weapon.
Rune Spear. That's not a Boomsday card, but they're putting it in the deck.
Oh,
and I love that.
I don't think I've ever seen that card played.
Really? There's a couple of even Shaman decks that have been playing Rune Spear, and it's been fairly effective because there's been some really good spells introduced into the mix.
Oh, like Stormbringer.
Yeah, the Stormbringer to transform your minions. Eureka can be really good in pinch scenarios where, say, you have like a very heavy hand with Fire Elemental, again, Greymane, Lich King. You can just pull any of them out.
Wow, that's really cool, actually. So the new Shaman Legendary spell is a 7-mana card that says transform all your minions into legendary minions.
Yes.
Just random legendary ones. And you'd mentioned, I'm sorry, what was the second one you mentioned? Eureka. It puts a copy of a minion from your hand into play. So like if you have a Lich King in your hand or what have you, you put it into play and you get to keep your Lich King as well.
Whew. Dr. Morgan.
Oh, don't change that. You go for the other Corridor Creeper.
Yeah,
see if you get a second Morgan.
You don't know if you need as many unstable evolutions as possible. Like that. You want to evolve that Bone Mare, for example.
I wanted a second Morrigan so bad. Dr. Morrigan is a new It's a new Warlock legendary. It's an 8-mana 5/5 that says Death Rattle. Swap this card with a minion in your deck. So Dr. Morrigan doesn't actually ever go away in that instance. But
yeah, so the idea is that Warlock could utilize some ways to shuffle another Dr. Morgan into their deck, and then effectively in the late game scenarios, they'll just keep swapping each other in and out, and you won't ever lose there.
Well, does get the clear 7/8 here with the good old Flame Tongue Totem, and then Flame Tongue's gonna fight the dust, and then you're looking at Regerwins and Korea.
Oh yes,
for Giggling Inventor, and
this is why we love Dane.
Yes, but I'm now looking at Dane's hand. I mean, you could see what this deck is dedicated to doing. It's either sticking minions to the board and punishing your opponent for not being able to clear them, or when they clear stuff, being able to reload with Corridor Creeper so that you can get a second wave going.
Yeah, Gerwin's nodding like, okay, so a pretty weak turn from my opponent. 5 mana, summon 2 1/1s. That's just not going to be cutting it. And so we'll see if this Giggling Inventor can hold. Lightning Storm being pretty decent. And one of the interesting things about this, oh my goodness, Voltaic Burst with Thrall Deathseer.
Yeah, I was looking at Lightning Storm, and now I'm seeing the Voltaic Thrall as a possibility. With Stormbringer in hand, though, I mean, there's so many different ways you can go with this. And again, this is what I was talking about in Game 1. There are so many combos available inside of all your decks that, you know, the order you choose to do things and your patience, or lack thereof, can be a big deal.
Exactly. I mean, you see the Voltaic Bloodlust opportunities as the game develops, too. I don't know if necessarily right now is a good position to use it, but, you know, you have options at your disposal.
Oh, they're going for Thrall.
Yes. I mean, this is what Thrall Deathseer does best. 3 mana minions as well as a guaranteed Snow Fury Giant.
Not too shabby.
Oh, if only the Arcane Golem still had charge, it would be at 5 attack. Admirable. Possible synergy. Cave Hydra could actually be surprisingly annoying for
Cave
the
Hydra
Shaman to deal with, but the Cult Master plus Flametongue Totem here is super strong.
All right, bye Cave Hydra.
They too have Corridor Creeper, which makes me think that perhaps Korea is also running their own package of Thrall Deathseer. And that's so interesting to me that Shamans are purposely running 2 hero cards. They're running the Thrall Deathseer Death Knight because, you know, you have big wide boards a lot. Shaman can summon a bunch of totems. And they have Hagatha to be able to reload their hand in late game scenarios or even clear the board, which is not unlikely in some scenarios here.
Well, Electra Storm Surge picked up, and that's a 3-cost legendary Shaman minion from the new set. It says the next spell you played,
Cast it again.
Yeah, cast it again. And so, like, if you play an Overload card, it'll overload you again. But it'll cast it twice. So, you know, 2 Lightning Storms or, like, 2 Lava Bursts.
Oh boy, this is a tough position. I think Gerwins wants to pray for a Volcano here from the Rune Spear, because you would be able to get 15 exact, or 14 rather.
Here we go.
And Discover. Crushing Hand!
Oh, it's a random target, though. That hand punched the wrong thing.
Imagine if they were able to clear it and they had a Corridor Creeper to fight back onto the board. But I think that's death. I mean, even with the overload, it should be only 2 crystals, which means that Dane and Europe will be able to strike back and claim game number 2. I do wish that they had an opportunity to use the Stormbringer, but hey, I mean, they already got their legendary minions and whatnot through the Unstable Evolution.
Yeah.
So.
You know, Thrall was a pretty nice bring back there, too. You know, Thrall is a card that really has not been inside of a Shaman deck now for a good number of months, and it's because all the Shaman decks have been so control-focused, where they want to clear out boards over and over and over again until they take control of Shudderwalk. And now we're seeing Shaman decks want to take control with just units on board instead.
Yeah. Or you are literally not allowed to play Thrall because you only can play even-costed cards, or you could put Thrall in, you're just a madman and you know, want to have a dead card and get Greymane and limit your deck. You know, Thrall Deathseer has not seen a lot of play, even though it is, you know, a very powerful card in itself. All the Death Knights have so much inevitability with their hero power, and some of their battle cry effects are even insane by itself too. Summoning a bunch of demons, transform all your minions to 2 cost or more. All these effects are super powerful. And then you kind of wrap it up with the Stormbringer. Kind of wish that they had the little finisher. You know, perhaps they could dream a little bit and finish. But, you know, I'm looking forward to see what they've got in the 3rd deck. Because, you know, so far, neither of these teams have disappointed. They've brought some really eclectic mix of cards, you know, into the fold here.
Yeah, and that's something I really like about this expansion so far, is that it's bringing a new element of, like, power spikes into these classes. You know, where sometimes some classes had them and then others didn't. And the game plans were progressing in a very planned manner. And that's a lot of what the Boomsday Project is about, is experimentation. You know, how big of a turn can you create?
That's right. And, you know, there are some elaborate combos, but one thing, too, that I've started to really notice, and people really anticipate it as well, is your sequencing and positioning. This is something that does make Hearthstone a little bit unique, which is How do I position my minions to the left or right? Do I want to combine my minions through magnetic? Do I want to place it on the right because I want to have a wider board to answer more minions like Giggling Inventor? Or do I even attack first and then combine, right? Because sometimes I want to maximize my efficiency by taking the trade with my Death Rattles first. So there's a lot of important attention that you have to pay to your cards and to the state of the board. You can't just autopilot compared to just, maybe I want to play, a big minion on 5, a big minion on 6, or just want to ramp into my big combo card.
Yeah, I mean, there are always going to be decks that do those things. But, that was the first interaction that really came to me was with Magnetic and positioning on board. I'm like, what if I put it on this minion, then he can get to Hunter's Mark. But if I put it there afterwards, I don't quite kill his thing, but it's so small that it basically dies, but I have a Divine Shield on it, so he can't Hunter's Mark. And I'm like, my head is exploding right now. There's so much little unique stuff in there that I feel like Boomsday is going to deliver me a lot of curious interactions for the next couple months.
Oh yeah. And of course, there's still some of that wackiness in there. Shaman's one of the most fun classes for me right now to play, largely because I'm a huge fan of the evolution mechanic. I think it's really fun, causes you to constantly evaluate, talk about like how many taunts or charges or divine shields, etc. that I can really play for each mana slot. So I highly recommend you guys check it out. Plus, there's just been proof that it works really well. You see guys from Europe and Americas tweeting out that they've been hitting rank 1 legend fairly consistency. Ike and Crane and everybody within those practice groups have had very good results if you want to play the Battle Cry Shaman.
Yeah, you'd said even Shaman and Rune Spear in the same
try it now,
sentence, and I was
don't
like,
you?
whoo! And I was like, I really want to get a Stormbringer off of Rune Spear.
I've played about 2 or 3 games, and 2 out of those 3 games, I remember having a Rune Spear, and they've been really big. One of the games I lost anyways because I was just short of damage. Like, I needed to heal, but I lost for exacties. But I had won the board. And then one of them just commandingly swung the board because, the Eureka pulled out the Lich King, and I was like, wow, I just win. Yeah.
I really want to use that card too.
Yeah.
There's so many cards that I want to try. Like it's only been a couple days and I've tried so much stuff already. But I go look at just Boomsday cards, Boomsday cards, and I'm like, there is so much stuff to do. Like every one of the legendaries just feels like super unique to me in the way that it functions. That it's like this limitless potential of like, can I make this work enough so that I don't just sit there and lose game after game? Like, I hope so. But maybe I can't. Maybe someone else can,
I can relate to the I can't part very strongly. I didn't ask you this because you asked Tice that question, but do you have a favorite card from the Boomsday or something that, is you're fond of right now?
So, I mean, Pogo Hopper is just one of the ones I think is just cool. Like, I'm one of the few people out there that genuinely enjoyed the Jade mechanic. I was like, I'm going to march through the gates.
He's not lying.
And you have to stop me first.
During Knights of the Frozen Throne, for that very, testing first month of the expansion where Jade Druid ran rampant.
This was day
ladder.
1.
Admirable kept messaging me about how much he loves Jade Druid, and specifically the Jade Druid mirror. Well, he actually was super fond of that.
I love. You remember day 1? We were at the Team Brawl event.
Yes, the Red Bull Team Brawl.
The very first 2 cards I made were 2 golden ultimate infestations. Like in this set, the very first golden card that I got was Libidinous Floop, and I was like, oh yeah, I cannot wait to Malagos some people with this. Like, I love the big combo stuff personally because you just completely blow your opponent out of the water. But I saw a Mechathune deck that Strifecrow had tweeted recently as well.
Oh gosh, Mechathune.
And the whole goal of it is to clear out your deck with Hemet, Jungle Hunter, and then at the end of the game you play a 5-mana 4/6. It says all your Death Rattles cost 3 less, but they die at the end of the turn. And then from there you play a Coffin Crasher, which is a Death Rattle that puts a Death Rattle minion from your hand into play. And then you play 2 Ticking Abominations, which deal 5 damage to your whole board. And when you get to the end of the game, you get to play all of those cards in order.
Yeah.
The Coffin Crasher blows up, puts a Mechathune into play, and then the 2 Ticking Abominations blow up everything on your side of the board, and then your opponent blows up.
Ooh. Well, we're not going to see the Priest this series, but we do see a Warrior. My eyes did not deceive me, Admirable. And more importantly, I've seen a 1 cost, a 3 cost, a 5 cost, and a 7 cost card appear in the hand of Ring the Hour over the course of the mulligan, meaning that there's a very high likelihood that they are playing an odd control warrior.
To me, the big giveaway is the Iron Beak Owl. Silence is an effect that a lot of times warrior decks just don't need. But when you play Odd Warrior, you don't have Execute. And so that means sometimes you have to find different ways to answer big minions. And Silence is sometimes a way to do that. And so you're trading off the ability to kill more minions for the ability to have extra armor and then find other ways to kill them instead.
That's right. And on Jackie's side, he's playing what looks like to be the Zoo Warlock, but without Prince Keleseth, because he's got some new cards like the Nether Soul Buster. Did I say that correctly?
I think so.
It gains attack for each damage you've taken this turn.
That's right. 3 mana, 1/5. So
Right.
if you life tap and play a Flame Imp, it's going to get +5 attack.
Oh,
3 damage
yeah.
from the Flame Imp, 2 damage from the life tap.
It's like a 4 mana 4.
Whoa. That's like a chill one, Yeti.
No, I mean, the idea is you also add Flame Imp into the mix, too. That is a card that, reminds me a lot of Darkshire Councilman, where you try to use some combos with it, but the problem with it is that Darkshire Councilman is, unconditional. It just keeps gaining attack forever, versus the Nether Soul Buster definitely struggles a little bit if you don't really have ways to damage yourself, but you do have access to life tap, your hero power. So at the worst case scenario, on turn 5, you can life tap and play it.
See Rainiar's face when the 2/4 gets played. He was like, "Oh
Yikes.
my, that's really good against my Fiery War Axe."
Yeah, Fiery War Axe, you got to see it in its glory at 2 mana and would have answered the Flame Imp perfectly. Take us to the classic days of Hearthstone. But Rainier still has, some plays that he can look forward to. Dinomatic, a card that you talked about, Honorable, about how good it is to destroy opponents' boards. If your opponent plays, the Vulgar Homunculus and other cards, then that's going to be really tough.
There's Void Analyst, 2 mana, 2/2. It says, Death Rattle, all demons in your hand get +1/+1.
Right. So this seems to be a Demon Zoo Warlock, specifically just flooding the board with a lot of demons, because Void Analyst was actually touted as one of the worst cards potentially to be released in terms of its weakest power. It's very staggered. First, you have to have first you're playing a 2 mana card that's fairly weak on the board, and then you have to have the hand of demons when you normally want to dump your hand. So people are saying that's very situational, but in this situation, exactly when you build a deck around demons, it can be fairly powerful, even if it just buffs 1 or 2 minions.
I think the card is fairly powerful in its own right. The thing about it is, in a competitive aspect, you ask yourself, what does it stack up against? And the answer to that is Prince Keleseth right now. If you want to go demon-centric, I do think there's a possibility that Void Analyst is better. But if you want to play Sarnic Chain Gang and you want to play, Giggling Inventor and Fungalmancer, maybe the Keleseth in that instance is just a superior option, speaking strictly from a competitive standpoint.
That's right.
But Keleseth's not always going to be there. And
Exactly.
When Keleseth is not there, I think Void Analyst you're looking at to be the standout card for demon aggressive decks in Warlock.
And I mean, you have the demon synergy too with the Vulgar Homunculus, a fantastic 2 mana 2 for dealing 2 damage to yourself, which is not really that big of a drawback when you combine it with cards like the Buster. And then Demon Fire allows you to remove or buff your minion. Let's say your opponent has a Fire War Axe out. You can buff your minion just slightly out of the attack range and force your opponent to deal with the consequences.
Yeah, he looks like a Buster, but sometimes he's not.
Oh, he rarely is. I think that, when you build your deck around the Buster, it can be very powerful as the game develops. Normally the problem with the Zoo Warlock or generally like minion heavy Warlock decks is as the game progresses, sure, you're life tapping and playing a couple minions, per turn, but they're generally pretty weak in the late stage of the game. But if you're able to stack your hand, that Buster can still be a 3 mana, quite the big punch later on.
Yeah, sometimes he becomes the Buster, or your opponent's the Buster, and you're busting the Buster. So then you got to have the Buster to kill the Buster.
Like Brawl.
Yeah.
Ooh, Ziliax picked up. Fantastic card. For the ability of Rainier to clear off this 4/6 Vulgar Homunculus and guarantee himself at least 6 life back with the Ziliax.
Yeah, the big question here for Rainier is where does he see that turn swinging back around? Where does he actually get control of the board and stop this assault? And that's exactly what Demon Zoo is trying to prevent you from doing by playing, bigger stuff for, just pound for pound on a card basis. Being able to go tall on a minion rather than going wide on board oftentimes is a really big benefit against decks that try to just kill your things in a row. They don't always have the perfect option to just kill your thing straight up. Sometimes it's situational things like Fiery War Axe or Ziliax here.
Yeah, I think as long as Ziliax can weaken the board a little bit, Dynamite can maybe shine. Rainier has seen that, Jackie has been holding onto this coin for a while. So 2 of the cards are the ones that you have to worry about right now, not 3 of them. And Doubling Imp, fantastic card, but in this position, Jackie doesn't have, any ways to buff it, whether it's Prince Keliseth or other ways to increase the size of that minions. Because Doubling Imp creates a copy of itself similar to Staring at Chain Gang. That is its battle cry. So if you can attach a buff like, say Prince Keliseth, then that would summon 2 3/3s for 3 mana.
Or say Void Analyst.
Void Analyst, which is, another Death Rattle minion that didn't get to have its Death Rattle go off, but could have a lot of synergy with this hand, which is why I think it was a really smart inclusion. Soulfire. Really hope that you hold on to the Buster. And hey, you keep the coin. Soulfire, it comes off for free. All you do is lose essentially a free mana.
Well, maybe there's something here, but this is going to be a tough couple turns for Rainy Hour and Korea as a result. I mean, down to 12.
Yes, he is in Korea.
down to 12 life.
That being said, I think one of the most, good feelings when you play Odd Warrior is when you stabilize at less than 10 health and you just somehow magically bounce back up to 20 because of armor gain. There's so many ways for you to survive. And, I mean, Dr. Boom in itself, let's say you brawl, your opponent can't develop very much because he has to at least dedicate 2 mana to life tapping. Then you can Dr. Boom pretty safely. And to make matters worse, Jackie only has a 1/5 coming up on the other side. Oh, but look at this play from Korea. They're going to instead allow their opponent to extend further onto the board so that they can brawl and hero power and take it even slower.
Yeah, I mean, the shield block plus the tank up does provide 9 life, which effectively negates this attack for a turn. So if Jackie wants to commit more to the board, suddenly he's worried about big AoE cards like Brawl. If he doesn't commit more to the board, Rainy Hour now has a big signal of what he's trying to do, and then can maybe mold those resources accordingly.
Right, and it's not even necessarily Brawl. His minions would be in perfect range for a Reckless Flurry, which destroys the amount of armor, but utilizes how much armor to deal damage to every minion on the board.
That's where the Buster's important.
Yes,
5 health is
alive
just outside of the range of that Blade Flurry.
Yeah, and that's kind of exactly what's on Europe's mind. The Buster stays alive to the Reckless Flurry. The Staring at Chain Gang is more mana efficient and puts more power on the board by a pretty significant difference. It's 4 attack versus 3 right now. Baron Geddon. I mean, you mentioned it yourself. You need other ways you can remove or have AoE. And with this Brawl, they're going to try to see if they can survive. And, most likely a 2-attack minion will survive. And actually, it's the double imp, which is even better because it dies now to Baron Geddon. Europe has to draw something big here. Flame Imp is pretty significant because of the Buster. We're talking about how this 3-mana card can have relevance later on.
So the sequencing here is Jackie wants an extra card in hand,
yes,
rather than the extra attack onto the Buster. So it's the Soulfire and then life tap to get to that point.
There could be a little bit extra damage. At a Reckless Flurry, and Korea doesn't have very clean ways to deal with this board. They needed a little bit more armor.
Goodness, it's so close to being there. Their hand is just so clunky. They've drawn both 7s and since the opener. You gotta have ways to clear this out before you can stabilize. That is the key position for Warrior right now.
Yeah, they have taunts with the Direhorn Hatchling. They have some good damage onto the board with Baron Geddon and Dynomatic and Reckless Flurry, but they don't have enough mana right now.
Don't have enough life either.
Don't have enough life. And you can see this is actually part of the some of the concern with Dr. Boom Mad Genius. His hero power is fantastic. Every single variant of the red button effectively is really powerful with Dr. Boom, but you need sometimes to have that buffer room of life so that way Dr. Boom's battle cry isn't such a big downside of effectively passing your turn.
To try to buy time, but Void Ripper does a great job of taking away that time if you're playing big taunt minions like this.
Fungal Mancer being drawn.
That does a good job of taking away time as well. However, if they Fungal Mancer and then attack with the Buster goes to 4 health. So the Buster actually could be like the key minion in this spot. You know, for Jackie, if he uses Void Ripper, that means it's going to be vulnerable to Reckless Flurry. If he uses Fungal Mancer and takes the clean trade with the Buster, it's going to be vulnerable to Reckless Flurry. So, you know, Rainier and Team Korea, they may have a way out of this right here.
They're hoping for exactly the scenario, 4 health or less across the board. And they're, you know, I don't really blame Team Europe here for crossing their fingers for no Brawl or Reckless Flurry. And the nice thing, too, is that, you know, if their opponent does have Reckless Flurry, they're still at 7 health. The only problem is that there is further development, and Jackie and crew need to start back from square one.
So 7 health, 2 Soulfires gone. This could be the turning point.
Oh my goodness. Soul Infusion with Serenite Chain Gang.
That's a lot of stuff on board.
Oh yeah.
The leftmost minion in your hand gets buffed by +2/+2 with Soul Infusion. So to me, this is one of the coolest cards in Warlock because that card has actually made me think about how I mulligan. Like sometimes Saronite Chain Gang or Doubling Imp is my leftmost card, and I'm like, am I supposed to keep this while I mulligan the rest of my cards? If I draw Soul Infusion, that means I get to use all of them.
Oh, but the second Dynomatic, admirable! You were talking about this card and how it can't damage other mechs, and so it destroys everything else. Doom Guard! I feel like, is there any more damage they can generate right now? They've used the Soulfire.
Void Ripper?
Second Void Ripper. Oh my goodness, hold on a second. There's a Gore Howl waiting on the other end, admirable, and there's 6 damage on board. The damage to the face.
It's been turned around.
And Warriors somehow barely survives. Team Korea will defeat Europe by the hair of their chinny chin chin. And that is going to be a 2-1 victory.
The tank up saved them.
Yes, the extra life, the Dynomatics that you were hyping up right before. You're like, yeah, I'm really hyped for Dynomatic. I love that card. And a high fives across from McGurwins. Dahyoni, Rini Hour, and McGurwins are going to close out Europe, and Team Korea is on the board.
And that plan is executed exactly how any control warrior basically wants to face.
Yeah.
You want to face down minions, you want to kill other minions, and at the end of the game, you got one push that ends it.
If there's only one way that game could have been more satisfying is if they were down to 1 health. Look, that's as close as it gets, really. Like, the whole point of the warrior deck when you play things like Baku, the Moon Eater, is to try and survive by hero powering and just getting enough life to win the game. You know, some warriors are also pretty sadistic. They just love to get to 200 armor, and they don't even care about the state of the game. They just want to get to the highest armor count as possible.
Guilty.
But the idea is that you always try to survive with your opponent's pushes, no matter what. You know, and you even trying to survive fatigue as well sometimes. So you know that deck doing exactly what it needs to do, and also shows you why on day number 2. I saw a lot of odd warriors coming out because there were so many zoo warlocks that were playing fast, or I saw the odd paladins, I saw a lot of odd rogues, really trying to capitalize, even token druids, and the odd warrior definitely has a lot of tools to deal with AoE or survive a bunch of attacks and then respond immediately.
It's aggressive decks that Controller is looking to beat, and they got some new tools to do it with Boomsday Project, which is out right now. You update your apps, you log into Battle.net, get on your account right now, and you get 3 free packs plus a legendary minion.
That's right. So make sure you guys get in on the action for Boomsday. But that was just our first match. We have 6 matches guaranteed, and in the end, we'll either declare a winner or maybe a pair of winners for either Korea, Europe, Taiwan, and Americas. Coming up next, we have our last 2 remaining teams in this group of 4. America versus Taiwan, featuring some of your favorite streamers like Ali and Trump, and of course, world champion Tom60229 with the leading point orders for Asia Pacific for 2018 in Shaxi. What will happen? We'll find out when we return to the Boomsday Invitational.